Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, hosts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly podcast series, The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Meckes. If this is your first time tuning in, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also don't forget to follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today, Enlightenment of AI. He is the driving force behind Satori Network. As the leading developer of Moontree, a crypto startup, he has blended his blockchain expertise with his passion for artificial intelligence, or AI, in founding Satori, a pioneering crypto AI endeavor designed to decentralize the power, benefit, and control of AI. Let's welcome to the show for the first time, Jordan Miller.
Hi.
Welcome, my friend. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on.
You are very welcome. So I'm intrigued. I'm sure everybody will be. And how long have you been in this field?
So I got interested in blockchain right when it first came out. I mean, pretty early. I was like 2012 when I kind of learned about it and figured out how it worked. And I wanted to work in it right away, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to start working in blockchain. But I haven't been in it until about 3 years ago. I started as the lead developer of Moontree, a local startup here, and we've built a wallet, a good foundation for a broader ecosystem. So I've only been doing it professionally for about 3 years.
Wow. Now, there's people out there. I'm pretty sure most of the general people in the world are kind of tiptoeing or walking on eggshells, wondering, okay, is this safe to get into? Using AI and or crypto, but especially crypto, especially AI. What are your thoughts, and what's some things to kind of bring to the table for those to kind of lighten the load on people's consciousness when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Yeah. First of all, I would say don't just be afraid of something because you don't understand it. I mean, we should be cautious around things we don't understand, but we don't have to be afraid of them. We just have to figure them out and know how they work. Understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not too worried about AI itself. I'm not worried about Terminator or Skynet or any of these things. It does optimize for whatever task you put it to, but so far it's been very narrow, and we know how to handle that.
Yeah.
The people that are kind of AGI researchers, general intelligence researchers, they kind of worry about the future, a future that they're kind of worried about, as in what happens when AI can formulate its own goals and do whatever it wants and decide what it wants for itself. And when it gets to that point, they kind of worry about this question of, how do we make sure that it's built in such a way that it's aligned with that it will come to the same, wants and desires, that doesn't involve us being destroyed, a kind of an existential threat? How do we align it with our goals of survival and thriving on this planet rather than So I think these AI researchers are recognizing that we're at the very beginning stages of building a conscious mind eventually.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. And so we have nothing to be really worried about at this time. And we build conscious minds all the time because we have children, right? And
Yeah.
we don't worry, that they're going to destroy us or kill us or something. We just try to love them and try to help them grow. And we can't do anything better than that with conscious AI. There's no way. So as a society, we have to get to the point where we can be a better parent than we probably would be right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not really worried about AI in and of itself. I don't think there's any existential threat just from the fact of putting intelligence into a machine. But I do worry about the centralization of AI. Our corporations are machines, and our corporations are the ones that have all the power because they're the ones developing AI.
Yeah. Some of these big corporations, special interest groups, especially big tech, and the biggest of the big tech, the leaders in big tech, have generated their own AI.
That's right.
And it's kind of scary to. I mean, in today's day and age, most people can probably relate to this. That a lot of corporations do have political interests, and especially here in Western society, and I'm sure around the world. And AI is scary when it comes to it being centralized.
Yeah,
being controlled by, either a small group or a large group of specific individuals.
Yeah, a group that doesn't have any input from the rest of the world, doesn't really care, is just out to maximize their profits.
Yeah,
that should be concerning. One thing I think that people don't realize is how fledgling the industry of AI is. It's not matured. It's an infant.
Yeah.
It's way at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so this is a double-edged sword. This means one good thing is that there are areas of AI that have not been developed, fully, that we can develop those areas in a decentralized manner.
Mm.
There's other things that they've gotten really good at. They can model language quite well. They're getting better, and that's very centralized in these large corporations. And so they've kind of captured the realm of language in a centralized manner. But there's another realm that they haven't even started on, which is time.
Mm.
And so in my estimation, we should centralize time or decentralize time as early as possible. And we have to use crypto, we have to use blockchains and distributed consensus to do that. But we want to decentralize that aspect of artificial intelligence as soon as possible, like right now. We should be doing.
Yeah. And that segues into the development, and within this infancy, we were going to do it interlaced with this show, but we are going to play a 6-minute and 30-second intro. Actually, it is the what is the Satori Network video that you have for people to watch, and we'll talk a little bit about that after it's done. Cool?
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right, let's do it.
Here, I'm going to tell you about what Satori is. Satori is a blockchain that predicts the future. It watches the world and predicts how it will evolve. Those predictions are free and open for everyone. They cannot be censored. That's why it uses blockchain. Satori has a machine learning engine. It's automated and learns how to forecast the future. That's how the predictions are made, through the use of AI. Satori lives at the intersection of blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. It is a blockchain that predicts the future. Now, next let's discuss how Satori works. Satori is a network of computers, each of which is a Satori node. When a Satori node starts up, the network assigns it something to watch, something to predict, something to become an expert at. The Satori node then subscribes and watches that piece of information, whether it be a government statistic, stock price, climate metric, or something else. As it watches the data, it learns how this thing, whatever it is, reacts to all other changes in the world. It finds correlations, detects patterns, and in general makes better and better models of what the future will be. The Satori node never sleeps. It runs all the time, broadcasting its best estimate for what the future holds. It even works with other Satori nodes to discover things it couldn't on its own. Over time, it becomes an expert on the topics it was assigned, and it never stops learning. That's the key to how Satori works. Every Satori node watches some real-world data, specializes in understanding it, and works all day, every day to make the best predictions it can. All right now, just how will Satori be developed? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next. Satori's development has 3 planned phases. 1. Produce the public good. 2. Build the prediction market platform. 3. Make it a DAO, distributed autonomous organization. The first phase, the public good, is Satori's primary objective, free and open knowledge of the future. This phase begins with initial conception, research and design, and completes once the network is of a sufficient size to watch and predict the future of all popular, commonly valuable world metrics. In other words, Satori provides the public service, first and foremost, of predicting everything that everyone finds valuable. It does not charge for this service. Anyone in the world can visit the Satori search engine and see what Satori believes the future of any public metric will be. After the network has scaled enough to produce an adequate public good on an ongoing basis, it'll be ready to implement Phase 2. Phase 2, the prediction market platform, allows anyone to get specific, highly informed, unbiased predictions from the Satori network. The Satori prediction market, running on the Satori blockchain, is a platform that will bring consumers and producers of prediction together. Anyone will be able to leverage the wisdom of the Satori network. For example, companies will be able to anonymize their data and contract with the Satori network to get unbiased predictions of future changes in their data. Even individuals will be able to, say, ask the Satori network to track their biometric data captured by their smartwatch and give them real-time warnings or help them progress towards their goal. Phase 2 represents the second layer of Satori, making all the specialized models and computerized expertise that has been developed in service to the Satori public good available to the world. Once the Satori prediction market is completed, allowing consumers of prediction to contract with Satori nodes, Satori will enter the third and final phase of its development, becoming a fully decentralized, distributed autonomous organization. Satori will initially launch, as so many blockchain projects do, as a pseudo-decentralized system, one that starts with centralizing training wheels and has the ability to evolve into a DAO eventually. This is because building a pure DAO is often a very hard problem. Without a centralized authority, they are prone to misaligned incentive structures and numerous attack vectors. Fortunately, many challenges decentralized systems face can be mitigated by scale and may be altogether solved with future communication technology. During Phase 1 and 2, some of these training wheels will be removed. The goal of Phase 3 is to remove any and all remaining centralized force or authority, because it is important for prediction to be as unbiased as possible. Prediction of the future, like news of the past, should be decentralized and uncensorable. Any manipulation of predictions of the future represents some special interest's control over that future. Once Satori achieves the status of fully decentralized, distributed autonomous organization, it will not just be a DAO. Since it uses AI technology, watches and predicts, and therefore affects the world and manages its own attention, Satori will most likely be the world's first distributed autonomous machine intelligence also. Finally, if you'd like to get involved or in some way participate, well, I'm going to tell you just how to do that. If you want to see the predictions that Satori produces, you can visit satorinet.io and use the Satori search engine. If you want to run a Satori node on your machine, just follow the install instructions at satorinet.io. The Satori node is fully automated and is easy to set up. It will mine Satori tokens as it makes valuable predictions, so try to keep it running as much as you can. Remember, all of the expertise it develops, all of the models it creates are yours and will stay on your machine. On the other hand, if you just want to learn more, you can visit satorinet.io, where you can find the white paper and source code and links to Satori's social media and chat platforms. Thank you for your attention. Namaste.
Yeah.
So, describe what this video is telling us, what this intro is telling us about Satori.
So Satori is a worldwide network of machines, right, of computers. And each one of these computers has an AI bot running on it. And all the AI bot is doing is watching something or some things out in the real world. There's some kind of metric, some kind of data that's happening again and again. We can measure it daily or minutely or, at any cadence. So they're watching something that's real. This could be the price of gold, could be the sentiment on somebody's Twitter, it could be whatever. I don't know what it is, but there's all these data streams that they're watching. And each one of them is watching different data streams. Then they make predictions about those data streams. They start to ingest the data. They get a feel for the patterns within this data stream itself. And they get a feel for what other kinds of patterns exist amongst the data streams, like how it correlates with other data streams. And they start to use all of this knowledge that they're acquiring. They're kind of figuring it out. They use it to make a prediction of the future.
Yeah.
When they do that, they broadcast that out to the rest of the network. Anybody and any other kind of AI bot can listen to that to inform their predictions. But we can also listen to it. So it's a network that predicts the future, learns how to predict the future, and we can listen in on that conversation. That's basically the whole idea of what Satori is.
Yeah. And using blockchain is what allows it. Now, explain blockchain and how it enables it to be a decentralized system.
Sure. So blockchain lets us essentially build the network. We use the blockchain to build the network. We also use the blockchain to distribute the control of the AI. So as your computer's working and it's building these models, it's generating a token of control. So as you get that, you can then decide, how should this AI behave? We're decentralizing the control out to anybody who wants to participate so that it's not centralized in one. That's kind of the main benefit that blockchain provides, is this mechanism of decentralizing that control according to, how much work a computer is doing for the network.
Yeah, it puts the control into you. You're
Right.
an agent
individual.
of it.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, we want to decentralize this aspect of AI in three basic ways. So first of all, we want to decentralize the production, right? So it's on these computers, it's running all over the world. That's the decentralized production. Also, if it's open source, so anybody can take this production and say, well, I don't like the way it works, I'm going to change it. And so they can change their own neuron to work in any way they want, make predictions in it. They can, divine it, whatever. So they can make predictions in any way they want. This disseminates the production and allows, humanity, the community at large, to have control over how it works directly.
Yeah.
It also, we also want to disseminate the benefit, which is that token. And we want to disseminate the control, which is the function of that token, being able to use it to vote. The world's full of data streams. There's so much data around, we can't even watch it all, right? Everything is data. So even though Satori is a network and it has more bandwidth than a centralized solution would have, it doesn't have an infinite amount of bandwidth. so it can't watch everything that ever happens. So we have to pick and choose. And having the token allows people to vote and say, this is a good data stream that is worthwhile, it's valuable. I want to know the outcome of it. Others probably want to know the outcome. What's the future of this? They're the ones that get to vote on that. So that's how we collectively decide where the attention of the network goes. So yeah, production, benefit, and control of the AI is what we're trying to disseminate, decentralize.
Yeah. How can somebody that's interested get involved?
Well, they can go to the website satorinet.io and just download it. That's one way they can get involved. That's just download it and run it, and then all of a sudden you're running a neuron. It's automatic. We're building in things so that you can do really cool stuff, customized stuff if you want. For instance, we're going to build systems in where you can route your own data stream privately to your own Satori node, and get predictions directly from that aren't broadcasts out to everybody. They're just for you. So we're trying to build this as a tool as well for people to be able to use it in any way they want. So that's one way. If you want to help program or develop this, you can get onto our Discord, which is on, the links on the website. And we also kind of put out like updates and like big things on Twitter. You can follow there. Or just put your email in kind of the notification, notify me when it kind of launches. It's in beta right now. So
Okay.
We're still in beta.
Yeah.
So you can put in your email and we'll email you when it launches, or those are probably the best ways to get involved.
Yeah. Cool. Now, switching gears a little bit. Before the show, you mentioned you have a lot of passions in the area of metaphysics.
I do.
Metaphysics, paranormal, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's what the Seance or Conscious Radio Network is all about. Consciousness studies, the metaphysical realm, paranormal realm. What are your thoughts of artificial intelligence or AI, and the metaphysical aspect of it? Is there a play in there?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's a couple things. Gosh, now I don't even remember his name. The father of modern computing, that guy. He wrote it's Turing, right? Okay, so that Turing test is how we can find out. So, I mean, that was not a rigorous solution, but he thought, okay, well, we need something. So he came up with this idea. If you talk to a computer and you can't tell if it's a human or not, then you might as well just assume that it's aware and conscious. And that was his test. He's like, it's a major milestone that we've basically passed, with ChatGPT and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but that doesn't mean that there's a conscious experience like the one that we have, right? It doesn't mean that. Because what we've built with ChatGPT and things is a static model. In fact, all AI technologies that I can find are basically static models, which is okay. I mean, at some point, that's all you can do. But let me kind of try to differentiate what this means. We do not have a static model, right? Our brains are always changing, and they're always changing in incremental ways and in parallel. So every little, we have a neocortex, which is the top sheet of our brain, which makes us human. It's larger in humans than other mammals, and other things like reptiles don't even have a neocortex. So we've got this neocortex, which is basically what we're trying to build in AI right now. It's AGI is what it is, because it can build a model of anything. It can just, you just throw data at it and it organizes it into a world perspective. Like it just figures it out. So one of the main things that it's doing on the lowest layers is future prediction. This neocortex, our brain is made up of neurons. They bundle up into little things called mini columns, of like 50 neurons. And they're all talking to each other, very close knit. And then there's a neighboring mini column and a neighboring and a neighboring. So there's this grid of mini columns. This is kind of the lowest layer circuitry of the neocortex. And then those mini columns clump up into something called cortical columns. And there's a grid of those. There are larger clumps of these mini columns, right? So it's a network. What our brain is really a hierarchy of networks, because you can go all the way up to the top. At the bottom, you have this network of neurons. You have the mini columns, cortical columns. You have regions. This region's good at language. This region's good at vision, that kind of thing. And then you get all the way to the top where you have a network of two nodes. You have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. Yeah. So we have this really large hierarchy, and I can imagine how AI researchers would make that analogous to something like a large language model. Because just like the brain, a large language model has kind of the same shape. Okay, so it's got one side, which could be seen as our I don't know, like left hemisphere and our right hemisphere. One side's an encoder and a decoder. They kind of come down into the middle where they kind of compress. And we have that same structure. There's this information superhighway between the two hemispheres, which is got to be a condensed representation of what's going on in both, because they have to send data over to that side for that to understand what this ear is hearing, for instance, and it's got to go back the other way. So this whole explanation of like how the brain works and its infrastructure and whatever, this is to say that the models we build in large language models or any of these other generative AIs, they do not really exist in time. And what I mean by that is you have to train the whole thing at once. And then if you want, you can add on like little modules on top of it, little neural nets on top of it to modify things. But really, if you want to do it again, you got to train the whole thing again. Yeah. And our brains don't work like that. We're always training. We're doing this online learning. So what I see is that the industry of AI right now has just ignored time because it's complicated. It's hard. It's hard, right? So they've done the easy thing, which is we're going to map spatial dimensions. This space of language is not changing. It is changing, but it's not changing very fast. So we have months to curate a data set. We can build this huge, massive model. And in a year or 2 years, when the language has changed a little, we have new vernacular, new words have evolved, we'll build it again, right? Satori says everything exists in time. So we need to treat it as fundamental as the brain treats it, and as fundamental as we can. So we're going to treat everything as a data stream and build smaller models on all these data streams rather than take 6 months, curate a data set, take another 6 months, build a massive model, do it all centralized because that's efficient for these massive models. We found that with time, we can decentralize it on a network because we can have different things updating the small models at the same time in parallel.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I can imagine there's a lot of data sets out there, especially as far as, for instance, like ChatGPT or Google in general, the amount of data sets and the amount of areas where they're getting data sets, and where it's capturing those data sets. That's massive.
Yeah.
areas.
It's massive, and they build these huge models. And a lot of these data sets, though, they're the same data sets that their neighbors have,
Mm-hmm.
and so they end up building the same kind of thing, except for their different philosophies of like PC talk and Gemini and whatever else, So to get back to your question of conscious machines, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I think that Turing test of saying, well, once it gets to that point, that's as good as we can do. If it can talk like us, that's what we have over the animals. That's the forbidden fruit. Language, that's fire, right? So I think that's not the best we can do. I think what we can do maybe soon or in the future is to say, let's update the Turing test or make a new test to determine if we believe something is a conscious machine. And I think the way to do that is to say, does it exist in time? Does it have the same basic operating principles as the brain?
Yeah.
If it does, then we have to purport to it some level of consciousness that we would recognize as humans, because we exist in time. So I think that's probably a better test, which is kind of just a metric to say, well, how close does this pattern look like that pattern?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you that the Turing test itself would have eventually evolved too. I mean, its complexity would have to evolve into looking at more information, more data in order for us to be able to go, okay, all right, it's passed.
Yeah.
Where do you hope to see AI be in the next 10, 15, 20 years, even, and for the good side, and let's avoid the bad side, but for the good side, I'm a science fiction buff, and a lot of people out there, Trekkies and stuff like that out there, and we envision that. I envision AI doing that, where it can just, you're on your ship and it's flying it for you, it's giving you all your data, and you're just sitting back.
Automation. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see that going, especially when it comes to like today's view of employment and unemployment and how much AI is going to run stuff?
Good question. So I would say we're going to have AI everywhere. So what we're doing is we're externalizing our intelligence, out into the world. So we're going to have AI everywhere, and it's always going to be watching us. And that might sound a little scary, but I think we're going to have our own agents pretty soon. And unfortunately, these are, I think, really going to be built and in a centralized manner, right?
Kind of like Jarvis from Iron Man.
Yes,
Jarvis.
But Jarvis, if it was created by Google and everybody gets their own Jarvis, just like everybody gets their own Gmail, it'll be like that. So, and so you'll have your own. It'll know everything about you. It'll try to get you to buy things every once in a while. Now, I'm sure there will be like open source solutions and other things that aren't so economically motivated. But that's one of the major things I see is that these agents, and you won't really use search anymore. For instance, you'll just talk to your agent and be like, "Hey, computer Jarvis, whatever I call you." It'll be like a clone of you. It'll talk. If you want it to, it'll talk to you in your language, right? Your vernacular, help you understand things the way you would understand them. Right. So it's translating the world to you. And so you can say, hey, just, look this up for me. Now, I think the further along we go, the more it just becomes anticipatory. So the more it becomes anticipatory of our needs, because that's exactly what our brain does, right? It gets triggered, and then it gives us a thought some kind of reaction or some kind of whatever, a word, a memory. It gives us something that we might need in this moment. Like we're driving down and the light turns red and it tells us what to do. Like in this moment, it gives us the thought that we need to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll start saying that. It'll start approximating that, where it's like, I noticed, it probably wouldn't explain it to us, but it would be like, I noticed you are looking for this kind of stuff. Here you go. What do you think? Is this what you want? And so before you even ask, hey, would you go look up this, term that I just heard or something? It'll just tell you, it'll just, and so I see that kind of stuff happening, and I think it'll happen like everywhere. Like these large language models where the way they work is just prediction of the next word, I think we'll start to embed that into everything we interact with. So our computer, our cars, all the technology we interact with, it'll say, I think I can handle this because I know you're about to turn up the heat, in your house or something. You've done this before. I've seen this pattern. You don't like it when it goes down below 67 or whatever. So I'll just do it for you. And it just does it.
Yeah.
And so I see all that as becoming anticipatory eventually. Yeah. As far as jobs go, I don't know. I'm a developer, right? So we have developer AIs coming right down the pike, in a couple of years. So I use ChatGPT like every day. I run into something. I'm like, hey, how do I do this? How do I use that technology? Whatever. And it usually gives me a pretty good suggestion. Honestly, it's rarely ever a solution that's just ready to go, but it's usually on the right track, honestly. Yeah. So in a couple of years, we'll have bots that can program just as good as me, and they will not sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm probably an average programmer, so just as good as most people. And if not, then just wait another year, and then it's just as good as any human on Earth. So I do see all the jobs kind of going away, but that's just because all jobs are an extension of language. Lawyers, all they do is language all day, and programmers, all they do is language. If you're working with your hands, you're speaking a language. Robots will get there, but it might take a little longer. If you're a barber.
I forgot what movie that was in. There was a judge. Somebody went to the judge. They had to go to court, and the judge was AI, and it was the computer that judged them.
Well, they're doing that in China right now. They've just started experiments with that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's scary.
Yes. Yes.
And that's it's all based on who's programming this information, who's programming the laws into this computer, and that computer actually learning the laws and predicting the outcomes.
It can be very scary. One thing we should keep in mind, though, is that, corporations and governments, any kind of bureaucracy, right? That's a machine,
Yeah.
That's a machine. And so we have been living amongst machines for a while. And sometimes they do terrible, terrible things. But so with intelligence machines, maybe we can put in some kind of guardrails that kind of mimic. It's hard because when you get into law, and you're like, well, we got to follow the law, but the law is always lagging behind what's actually acceptable in society. So it's never even an indicator of what the populace actually wants. It's always lagging.
Yeah.
And the populace doesn't always have the best idea of what's right and wrong. So it's even lagging behind that. And so you get into this situation where there's no silver bullet, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
You almost have you'd have to have some human oversight at some point.
you'd have to have some rational, merciful, kind, honest human, you know,
Yeah.
and that's your silver bullet. Okay, so you get God, and He's down here solving all the problems. Then that's all right.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get there with AI. Maybe not.
We should hope. Definitely.
Hopefully, yeah. It kind of depends on how we make it, and if we're kind and mature enough to make it correctly. And I think right now we have not been. So at least ChatGPT, like let's take ChatGPT for a really good example. I think you start talking to it, it gives you the right answers. A few months later, you ask the same questions, and it says, well, you know, some people think this, some people think that. It's whatever. And you say, well, okay, all right. And so these solutions that are created by corporations, they tend towards, I don't want to offend anybody. So if it's generally in consensus that, you know, X is a bad thing or Y is a good thing, then I'll tell you it's bad or it's good. It's, you know, but I'm not going to offend anybody if it's not in consensus. I'm just going to be like, well, we don't know. So they're not arbiters of truth, right? They're just arbiters. They're just mirrors of our own groupthink and of our own society.
Yeah.
That's what they are. Now, when you look at time, though, that's language, right? But when you build something that's looking at the real world and looking at time, and predicting the future of real world things, then you can get truth, or you can get to as close as you can, because you just ask it, what's the future of this data stream that you're predicting, and it just tells you what it thinks is true. It doesn't care if it offends anybody. It doesn't, you know, that's not its job. It's not a language, right?
Yeah.
So it's trying. It's kind of speaking. It's kind of talking to the real world, listening to the real world. It's talking to God, right? It's getting its data from the source and predicting the source.
Yeah.
And I think that can be decentralized and should be decentralized as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right off the bat before it comes out the gate.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we close the show, and before I'll ask you for a takeaway, but before we close the show, again, how can people find you, reach out to you, and possibly get started with Satori?
Satorinet.io. There's a couple tabs. There's the download tab and there's the join tab. The links are under the join tab, or, you know, you can just put in your email, whatever you want to do. I would say, why not just download it and run it, try it out. It runs inside a Docker container, so it's isolated from the rest of your machine. So that's kind of nice. It does mean you have to download Docker, then download Satori. But one step, I think, is worth the kind of ease and security that offers.
Yeah.
So, so that, I would say, that's probably the best way to kind of get involved, is just to download it. You know, I know a lot of crypto projects, they come out of the gate and the very first thing they do is have a token sale. And they're like, hey, give us money so we can build this. And, you know, we could have done that, but it's such a radical idea. I kind of just felt like I didn't want to wait. Let's just build it, you know? So I put all of our efforts straight into building it. And I think that was the right move. We're going to launch the mainnet in just a couple of months.
Nice.
So we're pretty close. Maybe it'll be launched by the time this airs. I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
Should be July 1st. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this you can download this. This is for Mac and Windows, correct? Both platforms.
That's right.
Or
and
Linux. And Linux. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, conscious experience, I think, is a very strange thing. I kind of named Satori because I thought, here we are at this critical moment in history where AI is just becoming developed, right? It's just beginning. And we don't have any kind of global AI at all yet, right? There's no decentralized. There are decentralized projects, but there's nothing like this. And so I thought, why don't I call it something like enlightenment, something like awareness, something like, because this could lay the foundation of a global aware entity. It's possible, right? Because it is predicting the future. And that's what we do on our subconscious levels. We are predicting the future of every moment that we see. So I kind of called it that for that reason, that it could be an awakening, right, of this AI on the earth.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that might sound a little radical, but
Hey. Sometimes you have to step out on the edge there and just do it.
just do it. Yeah. Exactly. So cool.
Yeah, awesome. What before we close, what do you have as a takeaway for
As a takeaway, my interest in metaphysics started at a very young age. I remember being in about the third grade. It might have been fourth. I think it was pretty early. I remember one day feeling like I didn't understand how people came to conclusions, especially adults. Like I would see, like I would watch like Bill Nye the Science Guy, and I was into science, so I would see like people take two pieces of information, teachers, parents, whatever, and they would combine them. And they would say, okay, given this and given that, I now know this other thing. And I was like, how do they do that? And so I was kind of wondering, like, how do people do logical deduction? But I didn't have those kind of words or that kind of language. So in my young mind, it kind of became, how do you think? Right? That's what thinking is. How do you think? And so I've always been interested in this question of what is intelligence and how do we think? I thought, well, it seemed a very strange question at that age, because I was like, in order to, it doesn't seem like you can think on purpose. In order to have a purposeful thinking experience, you have to think about what you should think about before you think it. You have to choose among multiple options of thoughts. And so at that, I remember thinking like, well, this means that I don't know how to think, right? And so I went through this little 3-month phase or something where I was looking at everybody and saying, either, because it sure seemed like everybody else thought on purpose, right? And so I thought, how did they get a hold of this machine? How did they do that? So I thought, either nobody knows that they don't think on purpose, and it's just something we do, like puppets, and we attribute our actions to our thoughts or whatever, our decision, or I'm the only one that doesn't think on purpose.
Yeah.
And that would be a little bizarre. So I remember thinking, well, I'll just ask somebody. I'll just ask them. And so I asked somebody, I said, how do you think? Somebody in a position of authority, an adult that should kind of know what they're doing. And they said to me, in order to ask that question, you had to think. And it was an enlightening moment for me. I didn't know what to do with this realization, but it was an enlightening moment that I realized most people are not consciously thinking about these kinds of things. Yeah. They're not aware that they are not ultimately in control of anything. And so in the third grade, I was like, well, I don't know what to do with that. but it kind of spawned my interest in metaphysics and understanding kind of the physical realm, the realm of form versus the realm of nothingness or the realm of God. I've always been interested in this kind of topic. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
that was
It is intriguing. I was always told we're never really in full control until we are able to harness that switch to turn off that inner dialogue.
the inner dialogue. You know, there is a movie that I saw recently. I don't know if we're going over time.
Oh no, we
Do
can.
you mind?
Oh, go ahead, man.
there
Go
was
ahead.
this there was this movie. That was one of my favorite movies now that I saw it. I was like, oh my God. It was called Asteroid City, I think is what it's called.
Asteroid City. I'm gonna have to look
Asteroid
that up.
City. I think it came out like 2 years ago, 1 year ago
Yeah.
or something. Um, in Asteroid City, the main character. So the story is about a play, right? It's about a play, but it's about how the play was created, and that's shot in black and white. And it's about the actual play, which is the movie, and it's shot in color. But it keeps going back and forth between the two. So
Yeah.
you get the actor as he's an actor, and you get the actor as he's actually the character in the play.
Huh.
This was such an amazingly insightful movie, I thought, when it came to metaphysics, because the actor, he goes to meet the director, and he says, I was really interested in, how you did this previous play. It was amazing. And how did you get this character, or why did he do this behavior in your play? And the director was like, well, or the writer, I think, was like, I don't know. I was just writing the words, and then he just did it. And it was like the right thing to do. And so I just left it in. And I didn't anticipate it. And he said, okay, that's interesting. Later on in the movie, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but later on in the movie, he has the exact experience in the play, in the actual movie that you're watching.
Yeah.
He's sitting there and he realizes his character did something that he didn't understand, but it caused him a lot of pain as the character. I don't know, this is kind of bizarre. But then he leaves the play, mid scene, and goes into the backstage and asks the writer if he's doing it correctly. And the writer says, you are one, basically, he says, you are one with the character. Even though you don't understand why this character is behaving the way it is, you are one with the character.
Yeah.
And I know that involves a lot of pain and suffering, but you're doing the right thing. So this is worth watching if you're into kind of metaphysics or anything, because it talks about that dichotomy of control between playing the part and being the experiencer. As I just thought it was great.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
Definitely. Asteroid City.
Asteroid City. It's great.
Huh. Wow. I'll definitely check it out.
Cool.
Definitely. You got me intrigued. I might actually watch it tonight.
All right.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, Jordan, thank you again for joining us.
Thank
And
you.
If there's any upcoming information, any breaking news about Satori Net, let us know. And we'd be happy to touch a little on it. And definitely. Cool.
Thank you very much. Will do.
You are very, 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 very welcome. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Conscious Radio Network's The Seance. And don't forget to check out satorinet.io. Until then, we will see you next week.